The last survivor of humanity lost the battle, but the gods gave him a second chance to go back 10 years in time so they could watch the spectacle again, since they use humans as entertainment, and for that, they will regret it. He returns swearing to tear them all to pieces in this damn show called the cursed reincarnation of the battle against the gods. The story begins with everything destroyed while the Horned Man wielded his sword against the protagonist. He was on the ground because the world had come to an end. 1 year after they lost the war against the demons, most of humanity had disappeared, and the survivors were captured and used as test subjects. Zephyr, as the last survivor of existence, continued this battle alone against the Demon King. Tartarus noticed his suffering and, with a hint of disdain, cast a magical spell to capture him. He said he had granted him a little more life so they could talk. He then began to approach, observing that among all humans, this one had been his only nuisance. He said Zephyr's persistence was extraordinary. He stated that only fools kept fighting a lost battle, but also declared that those who gave up immediately out of fear weren't wise, just weak. In light of this, he made an offer. He wanted Zephyr to join him, because together they could conquer other worlds. Zephyr asked if he was really serious. Tartarus confirmed, saying of course, the offer wasn't a bad one. Meanwhile, Zephyr reflected. He knew his body had been completely destroyed in the last battle. Even so, Tartarus was offering him a second chance, which seemed suspicious. Becoming wary, he realized it wasn't truly an invitation. It was a cruel provocation. He wanted to see him beg and be humiliated. As Tartarus extended his hand, Zephyr remembered her words, how she used to scold him for being so aggressive. She had cast that foolish spell on him. Grasping the enemy's hand, an immense burst of energy from another dimension was triggered. That was his answer. Zephyr rose and insulted Tartarus. At that moment, a powerful magical explosion occurred, destroying part of the demon lord. Tartarus was shocked and screamed. He cursed Zephyr and questioned how he dared humiliate him like that. Then he struck a brutal blow at the flaming body, which vanished. As his final thoughts faded, Zephyr believed his long battle had finally come to an end. He felt he had failed to avenge his loved ones and to save humanity, as everyone expected him to. Everything had ended in defeat. However, suddenly he was transported to a strange place. When he stood up, he noticed that his wounds had vanished and his armor looked brand new. He looked around confused. He saw a large statue before him and wondered if he might be in a temple of some god, or perhaps this was the afterlife. At that moment, a female voice appeared, saying that the place wasn't the underworld, but rather the lowest level of the pantheon, where the gods resided. He turned toward the voice and saw a glow coming from a door. A woman was approaching, and Zephyr, surprised, realized he couldn't summon his sword. She asked him not to be alarmed and explained that she was a messenger of the gods named Mercedes, an elite angel. She said that he was already dead and that normally he would have been sent directly to the underworld. However, due to the insistence of several gods, the three supreme gods had decided to send him back in time. Confused, he asked what she meant by that. Mercedes clarified that he would be sent into the past with all of his memories intact, thus receiving a chance to change destiny. She added, however, that only his memory would be preserved. His physical training, mana, and other acquired abilities would not be restored. Still, since he had been the most powerful human in the world, she believed he'd be able to regain them quickly. Zephyr wondered if he was dreaming or if the vision had been induced by Tartarus, or perhaps it was just a hallucination caused by his impending death. Curious, he asked why she was granting him a second chance. Mercedes acknowledged that it was hard to believe and offered to give him proof. He declined, choosing to trust her, but then asked what she expected in return. He stated that nothing in the world came for free and assumed she was only offering him a new opportunity because she wanted something. If that assumption were true, he thought, then it made sense. He recalled the moment when the god of destruction invaded Earth and a massacre began. People prayed desperately for help, but the gods simply turned their backs. They ignored all pleas and no longer even accepted offerings. He commented on how they stripped the priests of their power, priests who depended on divine energy to fight. Without the ability to heal or defend themselves, the human army collapsed almost immediately. The gods had decided there was nothing left to gain in that world, and so they abandoned it. He pointed out that such calculating beings would never give anything for free. She responded affirmatively and said she would let the gods speak for themselves. She added that they only wanted to see something a bit more entertaining. He asked what she meant. She explained that the gods watching him were disappointed to witness his death. It's extremely rare for a human, when faced with certain death, to show such strength of will and endurance. Until the very end, the gods had been deeply impressed by his ability to resist the vast demon army for 5 long years. His struggle had been captivating to watch. She continued, stating that many gods felt sorrow at seeing him leave the world so soon. She asked him to remember how things seemed to get luckier for him as the end approached. She explained that this happened because the gods decided to give him support, even at the cost of karmic punishment. Filled with rage, he cast a magical spell at her and demanded to know if that was all they cared about. She dodged the attack with ease. He accused them of treating his desperate struggle for survival as nothing more than entertainment, as if all his suffering had been for divine amusement. He asked if that's really what they believed, if they thought the purpose of humans was merely to entertain bored gods. She used her magic to strike him and forced him to kneel. She warns that he should show respect, since the gods are watching. Leaning in close, she states that he misunderstood everything and needs to be corrected. He is the only human the gods ever found interesting. They never cared about a common and boring species like humans. She grabs his face and emphasizes that if he wants something from the gods, whether for himself or for his entire species, he must prove that he is worthy of their time. Nothing in the world comes for free. She adds that there was another who firmly defended his resurrection, but for a different reason. Meanwhile, Tartarus attacks the angels, claiming he's tired of waiting. He demands to see the one responsible immediately. An angel tries to intervene, begging him to wait as his request is still being processed. Tartarus interrupts him, ordering him to be silent. He declares that he has conquered 10 worlds, and that it's impossible for a mere human to have harmed him. He demands that the record of this event be erased and that Zephyr disappear immediately. He says he doesn't care about the karma, he'll have to pay for it. Mercedes shows everything to Zephyr through a magical mirror, while he watches, intrigued by what Tartarus is doing. She explains that Tartarus is the god of destruction and has already annihilated 10 worlds, including his. His goal is to destroy as many worlds as possible. He has never lost a battle. He has never been wounded by anyone, until now. His perfect record was broken. She asks if Zephyr has any idea what kind of blow that was to Tartarus' pride. Zephyr wonders if that's why Tartarus wants to bring him back. Mercedes confirms. He wants to face him again to restore his perfect score. She asks what Zephyr thinks of that. He responds by asking if she's joking, because if Tartarus is so eager to die, they'll gladly kill him. She then informs him that she will begin the process of sending him back. He will be sent to a random moment in the past, but will have the chance to gather all the strength he needs. Additionally, the gods who support him will grant him some advantages as a gift, which can be unlocked once he returns. Zephyr thinks that he doesn't like receiving gifts from those disgusting gods, but an opportunity is an opportunity. This is his chance to take revenge, not just on Tartarus, but on all the gods who treated humans like worthless vermin. Mercedes mentions that coordination has already been set, and that only the final approval from the gods is missing to interfere with space-time. She concludes by wishing him good luck and hopes he puts on a good show for them. Then she sends him back. After some time, Zephyr opens his eyes and sees people gathered around him. Someone comments that he's not breathing. Another one worries, saying they're in trouble now. A third person tells them to shut up and yells for Zephyr to wake up. They splash water on his head and Zephyr opens his eyes. Another person confirms that he opened his eyes and reassures the others, saying they knew he wasn't dead. Zephyr wonders who those people are. They seem familiar. He sees a tattoo and suddenly starts laughing. Someone comments that he's laughing. Zephyr realizes he's been sent back 10 years when he was 20 and was a slave in a temple. A bearded man approaches, asking what's going on here. A man with yellow hair replies that it's nothing. The bearded man declares that the break is over and orders everyone back to work. He warns Zephyr that if he ever does something like that again, he'll be dead. Zephyr responds with disdain. The man with yellow hair asks what he just said. A man with brown hair steps in and suggests they move on. Zephyr thinks he has no time to waste with these guys. A little boy thanks Zephyr for protecting him. Zephyr wonders who the boy is. It's been 10 years, and he's forgotten many details. He realizes it's going to be a hassle getting used to all this again. He decides to move on, but pauses to consider his options. He remembers he needs to unlock the advantages to use them whenever he wants. He thinks that's what Mercedes told him. Then he turns and sees the little boy walking in the opposite direction. He focuses and tells himself to unlock the advantages. A magical power surrounds him. He's surprised to see the advantages and thinks he can't believe what they gave him. After a while, a yellow-haired man comments that the newbie is really impressive. The man in the gray cap agrees, knowing that he's a good worker, and wonders if he's had experience in mines before. Both are shocked to see Zephyr digging so fast. Someone else also comments on his speed, while the yellow-haired man expresses a desire to have him on his team, complaining that because of him, the others can't slack off anymore. Zephyr wonders to himself if this is really happening, as he still can't believe it. The scene flashes back to the moment when Zephyr decides to unlock his advantages. He finds himself overwhelmed by a flood of information. Confused, he asks out loud what all of that is as he observes high-level skills and items displayed in various status windows. He realizes that he's never had some of these skills before and is stunned by what's been granted to him. The mining team leader arrives and calls out to him, reminding Zephyr to get back to work. He asks if Zephyr thinks he's going to go easy on him, just because it's his first day. Upon seeing him, Zephyr recognizes him as the mining team leader. He mutters that he's a lazy idiot who never listens, even when you try talking politely. The man raises his whip, saying this will teach him. Zephyr, on reflex, grabs the whip with his hand, surprising even himself. He wonders how he managed to do that, but quickly bows and apologizes, saying he'll get back to work. The team leader, stunned, backs off. Zephyr looks at his hand, surprised that he caught the whip without a scratch, relying on his combat experience. The system window shows the advantage Iron Wall, which significantly increases his durability. He can cancel out minor damage and doesn't tire easily. Zephyr realizes that he truly doesn't feel fatigue and can work all day long. He concludes that, although a bit tricky to activate, this skill could be extremely useful. Not a bad first advantage, he thinks. The scene returns to the present, Zephyr considers that he received a total of 9 advantages. If he combines that with what he knows about the future, he'll be back to his former self in no time. Someone calculates his mining output and is shocked by the results, congratulating him. After some time, all the slaves line up. A person announces the end of the day's tally and reveals the rankings. Team F is in first place. The boy Bo exclaims, "Sweet." Zephyr realizes he didn't know the boy was on the same team as him. The announcer continues, Team B is in second, and Team H is third. The others are ignored, and Team E ends up last. The mining chief announces that according to policy, the food and supplies of the last place team will be redistributed among the top 3 teams. He orders everyone to begin praying to the great goddess of the light sector. The slaves pray, "Almighty One of the sector, redeem us with your eternal light." Zephyr recalls the temple of Ara, goddess of light and the world's greatest religious and financial power. A nearby slave says he's exhausted and just wants to sleep. Zephyr thinks that many there had lost their homes to monsters or were adventurers like him. After being taken in by the temple, they ended up as slaves for failing to pay the exorbitant medical bills. As long as the slave mark remains on their bodies, they are trapped. If they try to leave without permission, their hearts will stop and they'll die instantly. Zephyr decides he will pay off his debts and buy his freedom as soon as possible. That way he can move on to the next phase of his plan. Facing Tartaros, he is determined not to be defeated so easily this time and to take revenge for everything Tartaros did. Recalling his past life, he vows that this time he will protect what he couldn't before. After a while, the priestess Anna Primrose announces that anyone needing something from the store or wanting a consultation should come forward. One person asks for a beer. Another asks for 2 baked potatoes. The shopkeeper says a glass of beer costs 80 silver. Zephyr thinks that even after all these years, he still isn't used to the absurd prices of this place. The little boy approaches and asks if Zephyr can buy him a drink. Zephyr asks if he has money. The boy replies that he just earned a bit, but he can't afford anything expensive. He thanks Zephyr for saving him earlier. He adds that thanks to him, the team came in first place. He explains that everyone on the team is weak and usually ends up in last place. That was almost the first time they managed to earn any money. Zephyr now understands why they were chasing the boy. If even one person on a team falls ill and can't work, production drops and the rival team's ranking goes up automatically. He asks the boy if he's kidding, insisting that he can't let a child pay for him. The boy apologizes, saying he didn't mean to offend him. Zephyr thinks to himself that the boy must have intervened earlier because those guys were just a nuisance. He tells the kid not to get close as he'll only get in the way and walks off. The shopkeeper greets him and asks what he can get for him. Zephyr asks if there's any recovery water available. The merchant comments that he's never seen him around before and asks if he's new and has money. He explains that the water costs 1 gold coin per glass and 4 for a bottle, suggesting it would have been better to wait until he was actually injured. Zephyr places a coin on the table and says he earned 5 gold, deciding to take out a loan to cover the rest. He asks for the paperwork, noting that the place also offers credit. The shopkeeper stamps the documents. The little boy comes over and asks if he's gone mad, wondering if he has any idea how scary it is to take on more debt. He explains that out of a daily wage of 2 coins, they already lose 1 just to pay off what they owe. Without income, they end up in the red in no time. Zephyr tells the kid to be quiet and just drink the recovery water. The boy insists, reminding him that the interest on extra loans is insanely high. With disdain, Zephyr mutters, "Whatever," stating that he'll pay everything back. He asks what the kid meant by that. He knows that recovery water is popular among temple followers because it restores a bit of stamina. But what few know is that if consumed in large amounts, it can greatly increase mana. He considers that it would usually take more than 10 bottles at once to get even a small boost, so it's generally not worth it. However, with the advantage he has now, the effect equals that of any potion. The system window alerts him. The second advantage acquired is Herm's secret skill, which boosts the effectiveness of all potions by 500%. He reflects that making money only in the mines is practically impossible since there are no bonuses for extra effort. After finishing the drink, he starts exercising and wonders what his next step will be. Sometime later, the mining team leader shows up and asks what's going on, suggesting that he may have heard a monster in the depths of the mine. Zephyr steps in front of the man and confirms that he did hear something. He suggests informing the hunting team and offers to guide them to the place where the sound came from. He concludes that dungeons are the real place where money lies. He pondered the fact that monsters emerged due to a distortion in mana. Most of these creatures displayed hostility toward humans, which caused serious disturbances to the population over the years. Despite that, they also presented certain opportunities such as mana stones formed within their bodies, bones, or skins, which could be used as raw materials for crafting items. Over time, people began to view monsters as valuable resources. Monster zones or dungeons started to be seen as dangerous treasure chests. Eventually, a specialized hunting team came into the picture. He saw them as a division formed by carefully selected slaves, chosen for their combat abilities. Due to the risks involved in dealing with monsters, this team received a high base salary in addition to bonuses based on performance. He began to wonder why, being an adventurer by profession, he had been assigned to work in the mines. He believed there had to be some hidden reason behind it. Sometime later, a shopkeeper interrupted his thoughts, asking if he was paying attention. The merchant explained that he could not lend any more money. Zephyr asked if he had exceeded the daily limit. The shopkeeper clarified that the maximum allowed amount had already been granted during that period. Zephyr considered the situation unfavorable and concluded that if he wanted more resources, he would have to steal. The priestess Anna Primrose approached and suggested that he could get more money if he agreed to sell some of his organs. She explained that the temple conducted research with fresh organs and was willing to buy them. Zephyr asked to see the documentation. Anna handed over the papers and mentioned that he should schedule the operation for the following week. She stated that if he paid off the debt before the procedure, he could cancel it. She also assured him that the temple did not operate as a loan shark. The shopkeeper then asked if Zephyr had gone insane for considering selling his own organs. Zephyr insisted that he wanted more recovery water bottles. The merchant granted the request, noting that if that's what Zephyr wanted, it was his problem, not anyone else's. He then commented that Zephyr was a total weirdo, or maybe just a tough guy. The shopkeeper reflected to himself that yet another man was about to be taken to the laboratory. Zephyr, after receiving the bottles, drank all the contents and concluded that he had met the necessary requirements. Soon after, a member of the hunting team named Goat approached and asked if he was Zephyr, the one responsible for guiding them to the monster. Zephyr understood that the time was right and confirmed his identity. Goat introduced himself as the leader of the Recon unit, accompanied by Dale and Marco. Zephyr commented that he didn't have night vision but could use mana detection. He added that it was good to meet them. He reflected that although night vision allowed one to see in the dark, mana detection spread a wide sensory network that enhanced his awareness. He believed these skills were absolutely essential for infiltrating dark dungeons without attracting the attention of monsters. Goat thought that this saved him from having to buy a night vision potion. He suggested that if Zephyr was ready, they could head out immediately. Marco handed some items to Zephyr and instructed him to carry them and follow along. Dale commented that it was interesting to see a miner using mana and asked if Zephyr would lead them into the dungeon. Goat cut him off with a sharp order to stay quiet. Zephyr decided to observe them carefully. Two of them were strangers, but he recognized one who had been transferred to the hunting team about a month earlier after the cleaning of that dungeon. He concluded that this meant two of those present would likely die on that mission and began considering how he could use the situation to his advantage. Later, they arrived at the dungeon gate, where they found a boy waving. The boy extended his hands and tied a cord around Zephyr's arm, explaining that it was a magic bracelet. He informed them that if something happened to any member, the corresponding bracelet on Zephyr's arm would break, allowing them to call for reinforcements from the main base. However, since this was just a reconnaissance mission, everything should go smoothly as long as they were careful. He wished the group good luck, and they entered the dungeon. Over time, two monsters appeared inside the cave holding wooden torches. Upon hearing a rock fall, they got distracted. Taking advantage of the opportunity, Goat and Dale surprised them from behind and eliminated them. Zephyr reflected that the Recon unit's job was to investigate the presence of monsters and gather information about the dungeon. Based on that data, an assault unit would be deployed to wipe out the creatures with firepower. This was usually the standard procedure. Goat commented that those two monsters seemed like stragglers. He said their habitat was on the other side of the mine entrance, and that the NB hunting team had already reported this the previous week. Dale added that the survivors of the attack were probably hiding in that area. Zephyr recalled that the Recon team was also made up of skilled hunters. Goat called Dale and Marco, suggesting they handle the situation alone. Zephyr observed that sometimes when they felt capable, they preferred to clear the dungeon without outside help. Dale argued that their mission was to explore and not to take unnecessary risks. He asked what they would do if they found many monsters or more powerful enemies. Goat replied that there were 4 of them, not just 3, and that would be enough to face even a kobold. Dale, however, questioned if Goat was serious and claimed that Zephyr didn't count since he was only carrying the gear. He asked how they could clear a dungeon with that formation. Marco interrupted, suggesting they listen to Zephyr's opinion before deciding. Goat then asked Zephyr to show what he had brought. Zephyr grabbed a sack and confirmed it contained leaves and fruits from the moon shrub. When ground and mixed with cobalt dung, the fruit of the moon shrub produced a strong odor that resembled the scent of a female in heat. This aroma was so potent that monsters could detect it from over 300 feet away. One of the monsters smelled the mixture and covered its nose, realizing they were about to use it as bait. Another monster ran toward the scent and ended up falling straight into the trap. Goat, even wounded, observed the scene and muttered that he had told them it would work. Dale called him a genius. Smiling, Goat corrected him, saying what he meant was all along. Dale, curious, asked how he had thought of bringing that plant since he had never heard of it before. Goat attributed it to experience and maturity. Zephyr silently reflected that he was actually the one who had told Goat about the plant. He remembered that in his previous life, before being resurrected and transferred to the hunting team, He and Goat worked together in the same unit. He recalled how Goat always sought recognition but never had the chance to achieve it. The scene then returned to the moment before the team's mission. Goat asked if everything was clear. Zephyr replied that he had actually gone in and checked the place alone the day before. He explained that there were only a few Cobalt stragglers nearby. Goat wanted to know how many lives he still had. Zephyr revealed he was the recon leader in his former group and had a special talent for finding things. Goat asked if he thought the four of them could clear the dungeon alone with that plan. Zephyr said the decision was up to Goat, but he thought it was worth considering. Sharing an easy dungeon like that with other teams would be a waste. Goat began to think that this guy could be quite useful. He thought that moose shrubs weren't easy to find either. Zephyr always seemed well prepared and knew a lot about monster hunting. Goat also liked that he gave him credit without trying to outshine him. As the unit chief, a single word to the HR department could transfer him to the hunting team immediately. Goat handed a knife to Zephyr and said, "Here, use this." Zephyr thanked him. Goat thought he was right. That was probably why the rookie tried so hard to impress him. It was clear that Zephyr was a dedicated worker, but not desperate. Clearing the small Cobalt dungeon wasn't enough to truly impress him. Still, in recognition of Zephyr's efforts, Goat felt satisfied to take the credit for clearing that dungeon. The scene then returned to the present. Goat took down a monster and commented that he had probably handled the situation. Marco also defeated an enemy with his hammer and said he hadn't expected it to be that easy. Goat picked up a stone and lamented that unfortunately Cobalt mana stones weren't of great quality. Zephyr confirmed that the path ahead was clear. Goat nodded and said it was time to get the rest. Dale interrupted, saying something was off. He found some bones, picked them up, and wondered if they were leftovers from a meal or animal bones. After examining them closely, he concluded that they looked like Cobalt bones. Suddenly, the bones moved, grabbed Dale, and threw him aside. Marco prepared to attack and ordered everyone to get behind him. Internally, he cursed the situation, thinking it was over, but now he realized something else was there. Whatever it was, they needed to protect themselves. He claimed that his mana shield could withstand even Orc Chief. Nothing could break through it. However, the bone monster attacked, destroying the shield in a single blow. Marco coughed up blood and passed out. Goat was in shock at the sight of the creature's tail. Meanwhile, the bespectacled boy outside noticed the bracelets on his wrists starting to break. He remembered the instructions. If something happened to the members, the connected bracelets would also break. 3 of them had broken at the same time. The boy was alarmed, wondering what was happening inside the dungeon. Inside, Goat had also been seriously wounded. Zephyr, on the other hand, was already moving into position to face the monster. The system activated a window, announcing the activation of a skill called Iron Wall. This skill greatly increased the user's durability, nullifying any minor damage and preventing fatigue. Zephyr reflected that even with that skill, the monster ahead might be too strong. Though it looked young, probably less than a year old, its strength was impressive. The creature's tail grabbed Dale, who now understood what they were facing. It was a predator that used pheromones to deceive other monsters, making them believe it was one of their kind. When it matured, it devoured the monsters that raised it and left the nest. Zephyr approached Goat and took his spear, asking if he could borrow it. Goat, wounded, asked him to wait and wanted to know what he intended. Zephyr gripped the spear tightly, feeling that finally it was his chance to truly fight. With his magic activated, he declared that now he would let the monster choose which weapon it preferred to be killed with. The system window notified that the third advantage was the silver key, capable of opening a door in a forgotten castle. Whoever possessed it could store items in a silver room, accessible at any time and from anywhere. At the moment, the items were stored in the left hand. Zephyr understood that this essentially worked like an inventory. By conjuring a cloth and a dragon herb directly from his hand using the key's powers, he completely surprised the Goat. The system reported that the dragon herb was a natural tonic that calmed the mind. Zephyr pushed him aside and tied the cloth to the hand holding the spear, warning that things were about to get intense. The Goat, confused, questioned his actions, pointing out that he wasn't even a soldier. Zephyr, aware of his own mortality, refused to die, hiding behind a subordinate like a coward. The monster charged at the same time he did, while he prepared his attack with the spear. The system window notified the use of the skill Fear, capable of paralyzing enemies with terror. The Goat, watching, recalled an old lesson heard during his early days of service. He vividly remembered his city being attacked by an adult predator, and how everyone there just stood frozen, unable even to blink, paralyzed by fear. There was nothing to do but wait their turn. In the present, the Goat reacted in shock to the sound of Zephyr's attack, trying to understand what was happening. Zephyr, as he struck with the spear, confirmed that the fear effect was being effectively neutralized. He then spat out the dragon herb. The system once again reiterated the tonic's calming effect and also revealed the second advantage, Herm's secret skill, which increased the effectiveness of any potion by 500%. He reflected that among the 9 advantages, only one was an actual weapon, but unfortunately, he still didn't have enough mana to use it. For now, he believed it was enough to control such a small creature. Pulling out a vial of poison from his inventory, he applied it to the spear. He remembered his old friend, Fade, the king of poisons, and poison number 68 among the 72 he had created. The scene then shifted into a flashback. Zephyr recalled sitting with Fade, who was holding some papers and asking if he was sure about donating them. Fade, after dedicating his life to creating such formulas, saw little point in keeping them in a world on the brink of collapse. He preferred they be used rather than wasted. Back in the present, Zephyr pierced the monster with the spear, watching it scream in pain. He reflected on the nature of the bill of poison. Made from a common plant, once it entered the bloodstream, it corroded internal organs, causing intense pain. Fade's cruelty was evident in the sadism of the formula. Zephyr estimated it would take 3 minutes for the poison to fully circulate. All he needed to do was hold on until then. He kept attacking with the spear, but the monster hurled him away with its tail. Determined, Zephyr threw the vial of poison directly into the creature's mouth. The monster vomited blood. Almost there. Maybe 2 minutes. No, just 1. Zephyr knew his skills wouldn't be enough to escape, so he had to ensure the monster went down. He continued stabbing it even as the creature's tail tried to hit him again. As he grabbed it, he felt the end approaching. When the tail moved violently, Zephyr leaped onto the monster, broke the spear as he drove it into the creature's eye, and used the other half to pierce its skull. He then drew his knife and drove it into the monster's second eye, which howled in pain. Holding onto the knife to maintain his position, he realized it wasn't over yet. One more strike was needed. Mounted on the monster, he reflected on the present moment, comparing it to his situation 10 years ago. He knew that in his current state, he wasn't strong enough to win by sheer force. That's why he had prepared in advance. He remembered the recovery water, usually considered ineffective because it only increased mana when consumed in large amounts. He knew he'd need to drink over 10 bottles at once for a small gain, which made it impractical. But with the Hermes advantage, it became as powerful as any elite potion. The system once again notified him of the 500% increase in effectiveness. Now with enough mana, he could pierce even a predator's skull. Charging his spear with mana, he used the basic release technique and then finished the monster with a decisive attack. Meanwhile, the goat watched and was taken by a memory. He thought that, as the unit leader, a single word to HR could transfer Zephyr to the hunting team. He was almost certain that's why Zephyr was trying so hard. Even so, he could see that Zephyr was a dedicated worker, though not desperate. He believed that defeating a simple cobalt dungeon wouldn't be enough to impress him. However, upon further reflection, the goat realized how wrong he was. Zephyr didn't need to try to impress him. His talents alone would guarantee recognition. It was only a matter of time before he reached the top. Yet at that moment, he was still just a minor. He couldn't even enter a dungeon on his own, and that's why he needed the goat's help to do it. After the battle, Zephyr approached and with seriousness stated that they needed to talk. After a while, a yellow-haired man appears, gravely injured, and insists he's not one of them, swearing he's telling the truth. A black-haired man holds the flash star, which moves to attack him, spinning menacingly. The yellow-haired man pleads, reminding them that they joined the temple and asking them to believe he doesn't worship the demon god. Sahak orders them to crush him. The black-haired man strikes and kills him. A centipede emerges from the dead body. Sahak attacks it with a magical knife and declares that it's a marked centipede. He licks the knife and says he knew that fool was a worshipper of Tartarus. Later, Sahak kneels before the mafias of the Inquisitors. They observe that Sahak killed 7 team members just to capture 1 rat, questioning whether a 7-to-1 ratio seems highly inefficient, especially considering the urgency of the situation. Sahak explains that he knows how these people operate and that it's safe to assume the other unit members have already been converted. With only a month left before the attack, if they go and eradicate the heretics hiding in the temple quickly, they will regret it. Inquisitor Mouse relents and agrees to smooth things over with the hunting team, but he insists that, in return, he expects real results. He emphasizes that Sahak represents him and must not bring him shame. Sahak agrees. Meanwhile, at the Human Resources Department, a short-haired girl says, "All right then, Captain, go to the recon unit. Please fill out the transfer application first." She asks if he's the one recommending someone for transfer and what the person's name and position are. Goat replies that it's Zephyr from the mining team who just joined them that week. She recognizes the name and asks for a moment. She explains that by naming a member from another department for transfer, that person becomes affiliated with their unit. If the unit's performance drops due to a mistake made by that person, it could negatively affect their bonus or promotion chances. She asks if he agrees to these terms. Goat replies affirmatively and thinks, of course, he would agree. On the other hand, if Zephyr performs well, all the credit goes to him. He reflects that life is a matter of luck and he can't believe his fortune. The scene shifts to the previous day in the dungeon. The goat asks what Zephyr is talking about, questioning if he wants him to pretend the entire fight with the predator never happened. Zephyr confirms. The goat asks if it's because he wants the monster's bodies. Zephyr replies that he only wants the predator and will leave the kobolds. He suggests the goat tell the higher-ups it was just a kobold den. The goat reflects that dungeons provide various resources such as monster corpses, stones, and Mona items, but temple slaves aren't allowed to keep any of it. All a slave warrior from the hunting team can hope for is a reward for clearing the dungeon and a bonus that varies based on the loot's value. He mentions you could make much more money if he sold the items to a broker. The goat responds that it's impossible because there's a standby unit outside to prevent such actions. He adds that even if they made a deal, the follow-up unit would come and search the area for any items. Zephyr agrees and then proposes an alternative. He places his hand on the monster and says there was something there, but now it's gone. He applies magic and transfers the monster to his inventory. The goat is shocked by what he sees and thinks he can't believe it. Most inventories can hold a few items, but Zephyr just made that enormous monster disappear. Even the blood on the floor vanished. He asks if Zephyr doesn't want a promotion. The scene returns to the present. He contemplates that he'll clear 3 more dungeons for Zephyr. They can split the loot, and in return, he keeps the monster. The goat reflects that the number of dungeons cleared each quarter, and especially the number of battles fought, has a big impact on promotion evaluations. Even lower-level dungeons like Cobalt Dens are taken into account. He acknowledges that, as a recon unit, they don't engage in many battles, which is why he's been stuck as unit leader for the past 3 years. However, with someone as powerful as Zephyr on his team, everything changes. He realizes that the recon unit, being the first to enter dungeons, can have them all to themselves without interference from anyone. If they can clear a few dungeons with just a small group, it will make him look good as unit leader, increasing his promotion chances. Zephyr wants money. It's a good deal. All they have to do is be careful not to get caught. If he gets a decent price for the predator, he could easily pay off his debt. He'd like to leave the temple immediately, but there's still something he needs to do there. He knows the temple knights are preparing for a major attack in about a month. During that attack, they'll discover an item that will cause a sensation across the land. He believes you must participate in the attack no matter what. He's determined to obtain that item to change the future. After a while, Goat announces that the registration is complete and Zephyr is now a member of the hunting team. He hands him his ID tag and instructs him to take it to the arsenal to receive his basic equipment. Zephyr reflects on his past life, remembering that he joined the hunting team after the list of participants had already been announced, causing him to miss the attack. He knows that only 20 people from the hunting team were selected. He realizes that one must be exceptionally talented or have influential connections to be chosen. He considers his plan, wondering when he'll be able to execute it. Goat mentions that Zephyr will find a line of people on the first floor of the arsenal building, where he's headed next. He adds that he plans to stop by the hospital briefly to make sure Dale and Marco are receiving proper treatment for their injuries. He asks if Zephyr needs to retrieve any belongings. Then Sahak arrives with his men. Goat sees them, places his hand on Zephyr's head, and instructs him to lower it. They advance. Goat explains that those are official Inquisitor agents, slaves who work directly for him. He advises Zephyr to treat them as superiors, not fellow slaves. They have the authority to attack anyone they consider heretical and punish them without trial. Some people have been taken simply for bumping into them or not addressing them properly. Goat points out Sahak, describing him as the mad dog who joined the Inquisitor's agents solely to kill people. Once he sets his eyes on someone, he never lets them escape. Everyone should be careful around him. Sahak interrupts, pointing at Zephyr and saying he was there. Goat is shocked and wonders if he heard correctly. He apologizes for a moment, stating something is bothering him. He introduces Zephyr as a minor and himself as Sahak, an Inquisitor agent. Goat asks Zephyr to state his name and position. He clarifies that Zephyr was just transferred to his team and assures Sahak that, as the team leader, he'll handle any problems that arise. Sahak orders him to shut up, saying he didn't ask him anything. He considers the murderous aura emanating from Zephyr and confirms his suspicions. He can feel it just from Zephyr standing there. He believes most people wouldn't notice, but he has the keen sense of a bloodhound. This guy is genuinely powerful, he notes. Zephyr is dressed like a miner, but was recently transferred to the hunting team, indicating he was previously on the mining team. Sahak recalls how new slaves are assigned to workstations after completing aptitude tests, including physical and mana tests. Those with compatibility have a chance to demonstrate their skills, as the hunting team always needs capable individuals. But someone as strong as Zephyr was initially placed in the mining team and only later transferred to the hunting team. Sahak observes official Inquisitors and unusual agents surrounding Zephyr. He believes they can handle him despite his strength and instructs them to let him ask a few questions. He warns Zephyr to answer truthfully, while Zephyr thinks about Sahak, wondering who he thinks he is and how he's making things so convenient for himself. Sahak insisted on obtaining permission to ask a few questions, firmly stating that Zephyr should answer them sincerely and shouldn't even consider lying. He then asked if Zephyr had ever heard of Tartarus. Zephyr immediately showed recognition of the name, revealing his deep knowledge on the subject. He was well aware of the worshippers of Tartarus, a group devoted to the demon god, and understood better than anyone the crucial role they would play. These devotees were primarily responsible for betraying humanity in the upcoming Great War, an event that would lead to the fall of civilization. However, at this moment in time, lower-ranking individuals still saw them as just a fringe cult opposing the Orthodox religion. Sahak explained that there were several distinct traits that differentiated the worshippers of Tartarus from others, and claimed to possess a special talent for identifying them. It was this skill that earned him a position under the command of Inquisitor Mappus. According to him, his intuition indicated that Zephyr was a threat, which is why he had pointed a knife at him. He then declared that he would begin the interrogation as an official agent of the Inquisitor, warning that every word Zephyr spoke and every action he took could be used against him. Before being questioned, Zephyr asked for permission to pose a question of his own. One of the Inquisitor's agents found this arrogant, but Sahak allowed him to proceed. Zephyr requested that they move to a different location, justifying that too many people were watching and he didn't want to humiliate Sahak in public, as that could be quite embarrassing for him. Sahak, incredulous at the suggestion, asked what Zephyr had just said and remarked that he certainly was full of himself. He wanted to know if Zephyr really thought he could take on all 5 of them alone. Brushing off the concern, Sahak said that teaching arrogant people like Zephyr a lesson was worth it, and then launched his attack. They conjured a magic circle around Zephyr. A system window notified that the red field ability increased the stats of all allies inside it while active. The boost effect was amplified depending on the number of casters. However, the ability was only active as equipment due to the caster's limited understanding of it. Zephyr thought this would be interesting and decided to proceed with the fight. Sahak noted that Zephyr was standing in a strange pose like a martial arts stance and decided to just wait and see what he would do. However, unlike most, Sahak chose to attack immediately. He considered himself invincible inside the red field. Zephyr blocked the attack and tried to counter. He crouched and struck Sahak's leg, thinking he had hit him. However, the blow had no effect, making him wonder if Sahak's leg was made of steel. Then Zephyr unleashed a series of powerful punches, knocking Sahak out. Goat warned Zephyr to look to his right. A black-haired boy hurled a star-shaped flail at him. Zephyr tried to block with his arm, but the boy spun the chain again, preparing another attack. Zephyr remarked that he didn't know the boy could talk and said he should do it more often, thinking he was just a mascot. The boy launched the flail again, shattering the ground. People nearby warned of flying stones. Someone yelled for everyone to be careful. Goat found the boy terrifying. He had known Zephyr was strong ever since seeing him fight in the dungeon, but was surprised to see him defeat Sahak in seconds using a new martial art. Additionally, the tall man's flail seemed to have a will of its own as it tore through the ground. Looking more closely, he realized it was completely avoiding Zephyr. Goat wondered what would happen if Zephyr actually managed to defeat them. Sahak would be so humiliated he wouldn't even be able to request an official arrest warrant. Goat believed that if Zephyr defeated them, there wouldn't even be an interrogation. However, if he lost, Goat would be guilty by association as the unit leader, so he hoped Zephyr would win. A blonde-haired man commented that Zephyr's time was running out. Goat asked what he meant by that. The man explained that while Zephyr was fighting well and dodging attacks, several minutes have already passed. Zephyr grabbed the flail's chain and noticed a magical glow around it. He thought about how the red field was still active. The black-haired boy tried to pull the chain back with his strength. At the same time, Sahak took the opportunity to attack from behind with a sword. Zephyr concluded that the enemies grew stronger over time. Sahak declared that the fun was over. He ordered Zephyr to get ready as he would regret not begging for imprisonment from the start. As he rushed in to attack, his hand was caught by a chain. Zephyr began hitting him repeatedly. Sahak couldn't even see him clearly. He claimed his stats were 80% higher than normal and that Zephyr didn't stand a chance against such speed. He shouted for him to die, calling him a miserable idiot, laughing as he did. Zephyr then slammed the chains onto his head with both hands, smashed his face into the ground, and pulled his hair. He asked if they didn't know how to work as a team. Then he kneed him in the head. Saw concluded that even with speed and defense enhanced by the red field, it wasn't enough against Zephyr. He admitted to underestimating the big guy. If he really wanted to show off his speed, he should have used someone with more endurance. The black-haired boy got furious, called Zephyr a little punk, and demanded that he come closer. He grabbed the chain and hurled it at him. Zephyr mocked the situation, noting that the boy was built like a tank, but insisted on using chains instead of fighting hand-to-hand. He thought that if his old subordinates had made mistakes like that, he would have beaten them himself. Taking advantage of the increased power from the basic magic ability, he pulled the chain and made the flail drop to the ground. Everyone was shocked by the scene. Sahak tried to get up but was defeated again. Filled with rage and humiliation, he asked who Zephyr was. Zephyr responded that he thought Sahak was supposed to be an interrogator and asked if that was all he had to ask. Coldly, he said Sahak had no right to know his identity and began walking away. From the window, Ned Stryer watched everything. He thought it was amazing and wondered if Zephyr had been sent by his master. Someone asks what happened. Another person says they can't believe it. Sahak had lost. He tries to get up and says he's going to kill him. Zephyr thinks he's a sore loser and considers that he's taken care of the first part of his plan. The only question now is when he will hear about it, but it's only a matter of time. Suddenly, Zephyr sits on the ground and realizes he can't move a single muscle. He feels completely drained and his whole body hurts. It must be mana freeze. The system window notifies that mana freeze is a temporary pain and exhaustion that occurs when a mana user runs out of energy. He concludes that the skill consumed his mana faster than expected. Even with all the increases in his mana level, his body from 10 years ago isn't that strong. He thinks that if he doesn't do something about it, the collection will begin. At that moment, a spirit appears in front of him and announces that it comes on behalf of Lord Asura, the great god of debt. His mana reserve has reached 0, and now the collection for the Iron Wall skill will begin. Zephyr realizes that this skill doesn't just increase defense and endurance, Any fatigue and damage taken during its use is stored as debt, so when mana hits 0, all the accumulated damage is felt at once. He knows that many adventurers used this skill to try to conquer higher-level dungeons and ended up going bankrupt or dying in the process. It's a double-edged sword typical of Asura, the god of debt, a deity that feeds on human despair on the brink of destruction. He thinks the spirit was drooling while watching him fight that greedy idiot. The spirit uses its power and announces that the damage measurement is complete. The countdown begins. Zephyr feels his body getting heavier and heavier, but he needs to do something, and he can't move. He tears off one of his gloves, sees a small bottle, and calls it his emergency recovery water. The spirit continues the countdown and announces, 1. Zephyr drinks the recovery water. The spirit throws his great bell at him and announces that the user has recovered 1 mana point, canceling the collection countdown. It adds that the debt will be collected at a later date and disappears. Zephyr laughs and tells Asura he underestimated him, asking if he really thought he wouldn't be prepared. He considers himself a survival expert, having stayed alive for a full year even after the destruction of humanity. Avoiding Asura's collection is nothing as long as he manages his mana well. Iron Wall is totally safe and a super effective skill. In his previous life, it was worth about 500 gold. Skills have always been expensive, and this one was especially popular among berserkers. Either way, it's much more than he can afford right now. He raises his middle finger toward the sky and sarcastically gives thanks. Asura becomes irritated at the sight of this. After some time, Zephyr wakes up in a room and wonders if he passed out and where he is. The priestess Primrose is nearby and informs him that he has woken up. She asks if he slept well. He sees himself tied to a bed with several weapons around him and asks what she's doing. She apologizes, noting that he must be surprised to wake up in a new place, and reassures him. She says they're in their workshop. She comments that he must have been exhausted as he was sleeping deeply, and informs him that the deadline for the first loan he took from the store expired an hour ago. She grabs a knife and says she's worried about the risks he's taken, making secured loans and not paying the interest on time. At this point, it seems like he has no intention of paying. She brings the knife close to his eye and demands he say whether or not he plans to repay the loans. Zephyr realizes he had completely forgotten that he owed them money. If he uses mana now, Asura will come back to collect the debt again. He'll have to talk his way out of this situation. He states that he'll receive his reward for the dungeon victory next week and asks her to wait until then. She replies that they'll do that too, of course. But she asks about the daily loans taken from the store and the unpaid interest. She asks how he intends to pay the accumulated interest until he receives his reward. She comments that the dungeon was just a cobalt lair. Would that be enough? She asks what he's going to do and suggests cutting out his organs immediately. She calls her subordinates, who confirm an approach to cut his ropes. She holds a large knife and places his hand on the table. She states that for now, they'll just cut off one finger. She believes that seeing a missing finger will make him take the temple seriously. Zephyr pleads for them to wait and tries to remember something. She orders them to cut. The subordinate raises the knife to strike, but stops before hitting his finger. She also tells them to wait and thinks to herself, calling him an idiot. She demands to know, did he just say what she thinks she heard? Who was he? His subordinate asks what's wrong. I instruct both of them to leave. They ask what's happening. I repeat, telling them to leave. He acknowledges the command and comments to the other that I'm angry, suggesting they should leave. He demands that Zephyr tell the truth and asks how he knows that name. Zephyr responds by asking how he couldn't know someone as famous as his sister, or rather, the monster broker White Rose. Zephyr reflects that Primrose, a nun of the Temple of Light, is also White Rose, a broker involved with monster items, stolen goods, and the criminal underworld. He considers it foolish to make a dungeon raid with the cheap equipment available to the hunting team. That's why he plans to make a deal with her to acquire better items. He explains that he was actually on his way to see her, thanks them for picking him up, and asks if they could untie him first. He adds that it doesn't seem right to discuss business while lying down and propose a more productive deal. Meanwhile, Sahak wakes up in his room and throws away his food angrily. A nurse tells him to calm down and reminds him he needs to rest. He remembers Zephyr asking if that was all, as if saying he had no right to know. Sahak curses him and demands to know how he dares. He declares he will kill that idiot even if it's the last thing he does. Ned Stryer enters the room and asks what's going on, questioning who is causing such a disturbance in the hospital. Sahak greets him and says good evening. Ned reassures him, saying everything is fine and he doesn't need to get up. He tells the healers to leave, saying he will take care of Sahak. They acknowledge and leave. Ned mentions he heard that Sahak had a minor accident. Sahak apologizes, admitting he was wrong, but insists there's nothing to worry about. He puts a knife in his mouth and asks what Ned means by nothing to worry about. He mentions that everywhere he goes, everyone talks about it all night long. Still, he assures there's no reason to worry. He explains that Inquisitor Mathis always said to never do anything that would shame him. But Sahak got beaten up in front of all those slaves, looking like a stray dog on the street. He grabs a knife and states they only gave him freedom because they had high hopes for him. When he discovered the first Tartarus worshipper, They thought he had a special gift. He asks if Ned knows how many Tartarus worshippers he has hunted in the last 6 months, including the first one. Sahak claims it was only 2. He acknowledges that his superiors are starting to doubt his abilities. They are tired of tolerating his nonsense, and now he has mocked the title Inquisitor's agent. Sahak bows and begs for one more chance, promising to do anything. He says that first he must fix things by killing the guy who humiliated him. Then he will decide what to do. He believes that if he can't even manage that, he won't be worthy of wearing the red agent uniform anymore. He throws a package in front of Ned and instructs him to use it. Sahak sees some magical items and identifies them as belonging to Tartarus worshippers. Ned mentions he was in the room of that worshipper Sahak had captured and leaves it to him to decide whether to use them or not. He adds that Sahak has nothing to lose anyway. He advises him to make his choice without regrets and leaves the room. He considers Seek, the mad dog, the common enemy of all the slaves on the hunting team. Having killed an impressive 26 slaves in the temple in the last 6 months, going back to being a slave now would mean certain death at the hands of the team. He grabs the magic orb and thinks there's no chance things will start to get better. He'd worked hard to escape the misery of being a slave and won't let everything end like this. That idiot will die. Not him. Meanwhile, Ned instructs a guard to keep an eye on Sahak and make sure he doesn't do anything stupid. The guard agrees. Ned observes that people need to know their place or they will be discarded like him. He asks about the talent and comments that the fool has no idea he only helped create a distraction. The guard mentions that thanks to Sahak's antics, the leader of the Temple Knights has lowered his guard. Ned plans to infiltrate the Knights' attack and intercept the item in the process. He intends to eliminate the leader of the Knights in the dungeon, allowing the Tartarus worshippers to take control of the third parish of the Temple of Light. He believes this mission will change the fate of the Tartarus worshippers, and he won't let anyone interfere with his plans. He agrees to investigate Zephyr. He considers that Zephyr was using martial arts techniques known only by the Master and his disciples. If the Master sent him to help them, why didn't he approach in the usual way? He finds Zephyr suspicious. If he's not careful, information about them might leak. Therefore, he plans to use Sahak to test him. He decides that if Zephyr is not on their side, they will simply get rid of him. Oh, ChatGPT dissing. Meanwhile, Anna Primrose observes the monster's corpse and thinks she can't believe it. She thought he was just a lunatic. But look at that. Zephyr asks if she liked it. She asks if he's joking and says she loved it. Then she says that, anyway, she wants to make sure everything's in order. The system window notifies the items to be sold. A predator's corpse with Enmona stones, brain, and some damaged bones. The items to be bought are 5 advanced divine enchantments, a miraculous healing rosary, a salamander stone, a silver alchemy set, rent of a blessed sun herb, a blessed moon herb, a horn, etc. She notes that there is nothing there she can't get for him. The problem is the money. These items cost a total of 5,000 gold. You'll have to bring her 3 more predators. She says there's no problem. You will bring them in 3 weeks. She asks him to have everything ready for her. But before that, she needs one more favor. After some time, Zephyr sat down with Cabra and the other members of the group. Cabra tried to create a more welcoming atmosphere, commented that everyone already knew each other, but suggested they introduce themselves again for the new member. They started by introducing Marco, referring to him as the unit's oil worker. Marco responded politely, showing pleasure in meeting Zephyr. Then Cabra mentioned Dale, highlighting that he had been with them for only 3 months, but had already proven to be an excellent swordsman. Finally, he introduced Zephyr as the newest and most promising member of the team. With a gesture of enthusiasm, Cabra encouraged everyone to toast, raising their cups. Meanwhile, Zephyr observed the group with some curiosity, wondering why there was tension in the air. In his view, everyone should be more relaxed. After all, he had been sent to help them. Even with a stern expression, he admitted that the food was not worthy of a celebration, but given everyone's debts, it was the best they could do. Before the atmosphere could cool even more, Zephyr asked to speak. Discreetly, he took out a hidden bottle, and in a direct tone, declared that he usually didn't drink horse urine. Everyone visibly brightened upon seeing the bottle and began asking where Zephyr had gotten it. He believed he had acquired it from White Rose, a luxury drink most slaves would never dream of buying. He then suggested everyone take a shot and proposed a toast to their future collaboration. Goat commented that he already knew what kind of person Zephyr was, a cool guy, and everyone filled their cups. Zephyr saw a useful exchange. He would help improve the group's reputation while they would help him steal monster corpses. Whether they liked it or not, they were all involved until the attack happened. He reflected that in his past life, he had been part of the same unit as Goat, so he knew him well. All he needed was to guide him because the other 2 members were not alive back then and therefore were still unknown to him. He wondered if they would cooperate or if he would have to eliminate them, but he thought he would soon have that answer. He believed people helped those who offered them what they wanted: money to the greedy, success to the ambitious, and power to those yearning for importance. He thought it was enough to strengthen them a bit, although he knew there was always at least one annoying exception in any group, and he wasn't the kind to tolerate people he didn't like. Dale, for his part, watched him with suspicion and concluded he didn't like that guy. The scene then shifted to a flashback where Goat talked with Dale and Marco. Goat emphasized the importance of the current mission for the group. At that moment, he was at level 4, while Marco and Dale were at level 5. As they well knew, even a level promotion drastically changed how others treated them. Therefore, he asked for both their cooperation and to treat Zephyr kindly. Marco mentioned that he still found it unbelievable that the rookie had saved them and that Goat had made a deal with him. Dale acknowledged that, as the unit leader, it was Goat's decision, but questioned whether they should have been consulted first. Goat admitted he also wondered if Zephyr hadn't invented the whole story, taking advantage of his unconsciousness to trick him. However, he dismissed the idea that a rookie could defeat a predator alone, considering it absurd. He then questioned who else could have done it. He warned that if someone found out about the deal, they could end up imprisoned or even executed for trafficking monster corpses. Marco put his finger to his lips, asking for silence because someone could hear them. He remembered that Zephyr was already part of the unit and that they had agreed to split rewards into 3 parts. He suggested waiting to see how the situation would develop. The scene returned to the present. Dale even considered the suggestion to wait and see, but soon dismissed it, believing his companions were naive. In his view, Goat didn't know what he was doing, and Marco only sympathized with Zephyr because of the drink he brought. He refused to accept him into the group, convinced that he knew how to spot problems. He reflected that if Marco had been fooled, soon everyone would realize that yelling loudly wasn't enough to survive in that profession. After all, they were a hunting team raiding dungeons to make a living. After some time, the group began moving toward the cave. Zephyr thought of Aaron, an underground city carved into the side of a mountain centuries ago. Marco commented that he didn't know a place like that existed, only 2 days' travel from the temple. Dale asked if there really were people living in the caves, showing interest. Goat explained that the interior was even more fascinating, with living rooms, bedrooms, kitchens, and even guest rooms. For that reason, people sent on missions by the temple or travelers seeking healing often stayed at the city's edges. He remembered having stayed there when he was still a rookie. Marco joked that Goat should have taken them there back then, not now when the place was already infested with monsters. They entered the cave and the webs spread around it. Zephyr activated his magical ability and reflected on mana perception. This technique increased his sensitivity by surrounding his body with mana or spreading it on the ground, allowing him to detect object outlines, movements, and especially the presence of mana, as if physically touching the targets. Following the group, he spotted a black steel spider. Soon, they sat on the ground to discuss. Dale asked if it was really there. Zephyr confirmed, saying he had found traces at the entrance. He then began to explain the plan. They would avoid the webs and head to the hole where the baby spiders would be. Drawing a sketch on the ground, he continued, they would pour a paralyzing drug in the spot, wait 1 minute, and eliminate them all. He added that he would have to keep his mana perception active during that time, which would be difficult. However, since the spiders slept during the day, it was enough to approach carefully. Dale suggested waiting a minute, noting that the problem wasn't the difficulty of the plan, but the type of enemy they would face. He said that if it really was a black steel spider, the 4 of them wouldn't stand a chance alone. He explained that this kind of monster had a shell as tough as steel, impenetrable by swords, plus powerful attacks. The worst, however, was its accelerated reproduction, capable of forming an army in a short time. He said attacking a black steel spider nest was even riskier than facing an adult predator. Thus, he suggested reporting the dungeon to the temple or at least seeking reinforcement from the combat team. Zephyr agreed, saying it was a good suggestion. However, he added that if Dale didn't think he could handle the situation, he was welcome to stay outside. He said he could clear the dungeon alone anyway. Dale did not expect that response, but it only reinforced his suspicions that Zephyr was a fraud. He thought he had not witnessed Zephyr facing the Predator or the Inquisitor agent Sahak. Now he claimed he could defeat a black steel spider nest alone. None of this made sense to Dale. He thought if anyone really had that level of power, they wouldn't be in a unit like theirs. He concluded the dungeon probably wasn't as dangerous as Zephyr said. He believed Zephyr was just trying to scare them so they wouldn't accompany him. Determined to find out how far this act went, Dale decided to watch him. Suddenly, his hand was hit by a web. Surprised, he tried to free himself, but it didn't give way. Soon, he saw several spiders approaching and was shocked to see one leap toward him. Zephyr realized the danger and decided it was time to act. Quickly, he grabbed Dale to save him. He moved forward to attack the creature, but another spider jumped onto his arm and started biting him. Zephyr, surprised to see that the enemies couldn't sink their teeth in, wondered what was wrong. Without hesitation, he delivered a strike charged with mana, eliminating them immediately. Dale, stunned by the scene, quickly ordered everyone to gather. The group huddled together as the spiders surrounded them and moved in to attack. To Dale, this clearly seemed like a trap. After all, inside a dungeon, you can never predict what's coming next. Knowing this, he considered the possibility that if they had to fight, then so be it. He recalled having given Marco a cloak, instructing him to wrap it around his hammer. He also told one of the goat-like members to do the same with their weapons, using their own cloaks. He explained that most swords were ineffective against spider webs. Therefore, they should wrap their weapons with cloaks to be able to break through them. Marco followed the instructions, and upon destroying one of the webs with his cloaked hammer, realized the strategy worked. Although the web stuck to the weapon, it wasn't strong enough to stop him from continuing to swing the hammer. While eliminating some spiders, the goat-like creature was startled upon noticing their number. Dozens, hundreds, maybe countless. Dale, on his part, also charged into the attack and angrily shouted for them to back off, calling the creatures little pests. During the fight, one of the spiders managed to injure his arm, opening a cut. Despite that, he stayed focused and encouraged the others to hurry up. Zephyr remembered having warned that once all the monsters were gathered around them, he would handle the situation. Keeping his promise, he moved to attack. After some intense combat, the group managed to eliminate all the spiders. The goat-like creature asked if they had managed to get rid of them all. Dale sat down, holding his injured arm while assessing that the cuts were deep. He reflected that he shouldn't have underestimated them and regretted not being able to handle it alone. He felt embarrassed, realizing he was depending on someone else to help him. Zephyr handed him a bottle of recovery water, recommending he drink it. He explained it was a mixture of healing water with medicinal herbs, working as an improvised potion. Dale began to suspect that Zephyr knew exactly what was going on during the entire confrontation. His mana perception seemed much broader and more precise than anyone else's there. This led him to believe that Zephyr probably also realized he was the first to get caught in the webs. He wondered if he would be reprimanded for that. Zephyr, however, said everyone makes mistakes and the important thing is not to repeat them. He recalled that in his previous life, he had trained many inexperienced warriors. Most of them couldn't improve, even with detailed instructions. But Dale had shown himself different, keeping total focus during the explanations. To Zephyr, Dale was the type of person who only learns by facing situations directly, since words alone weren't enough. Even sensing Dale's distrust, he believed that by the end of the dungeon, Dale would choose either to run away like a coward or accept his leadership. In the following fight, Zephyr attacked a large spider with a goat-like body and confirmed that his strategy worked. The paralyzing drug had slowed them down. Dale pierced one of them with his sword and recalled Zephyr's advice, noticing that the lower parts of their bodies were more vulnerable. He acknowledged that Zephyr had been right about everything, from the monster's habits and weaknesses to the most efficient way to defeat them. This accuracy made Dale wonder how someone could have access to such an amount of information. Intrigued, he began questioning who that highly experienced man really was. Meanwhile, he continued to fight, cutting open the belly of another spider. The goat-like creature quickly understood the method and confirmed the simple "got it." Marco, excited, expressed his admiration, saying Zephyr was impressive. Dale commented that after that, everything became easier. Zephyr praised the group, stating they had made a good start, and sat among the bodies of the defeated spiders. Dale was surprised to realize the effort required to defeat just one large spider. The goat reflected on the absurd number Zephyr had managed to take down alone. Zephyr suggested they take a short break to rest and asked the goat to retrieve the food. She agreed with a simple oak and started eating. Marco, curious, asked Zephyr what field he had worked in before. Zephyr replied that he was an adventurer. Marco continued, questioning if he had belonged to a large guild or trained with any renowned master. Dale also showed interest, reflecting on Zephyr's mysterious past. Without giving many details, Zephyr commented that now only the boss room remained. Marco reacted enthusiastically, saying that was great. The goat asked what they should do next. In response, Zephyr cut off the leg of a spider, split the bone, and improvised a weapon from it. He stated that everyone had done well so far, but from this point on, he needed them to leave the rest to him. The others were shocked to hear those words. The goat reflects on the last 4 years he spent in the hunting team. During that time, many comrades lost their lives, but he was lucky to survive. That survival, however, was no mere coincidence. He always chose the safest routes and faithfully followed the orders of his superiors, avoiding unnecessary risks. He remembers Dale saying it would be a waste to share such an easy dungeon with other people. Meanwhile, Marco observes that he didn't expect everything to be so simple, recalling the moment they found the stone goat. He regrets that the stone monsters weren't more valuable since they were just kobolds. He attributes this to the fact that he was never promoted, though it doesn't bother him. For him, risking his life isn't worth it. Zephyr announces that he has done his part and demands that everyone leave the place. The goat realizes that Zephyr intended to face the dungeon boss alone from the beginning. He considers that they really wouldn't be much help, so it would be best to let Zephyr act freely. He agrees resignedly, accepting the decision. Marco, however, suggests that since they're all there, they could accompany Zephyr in this last stage. After all, it made no sense to simply leave. The goat wonders what Marco meant by that. Dale, in turn, agrees with the idea, stating that they'd have better chances if they work as a team. The goat, in thought, considers that Dale should pull himself together soon. He notes that there are only 2 of them and that Dale would end up dying if he didn't learn to recognize his own limits. He looks at Zephyr, pondering whether he should try to convince him to stop the others from following. However, Zephyr clarifies that there was a misunderstanding. He didn't tell him to rest, but to leave, as he now intended to assign roles to each one. The goat feels uncertain about the new situation, silently disagreeing with the decision. After some time, Zephyr advances deeper into the cave. Looking down, he concludes that he has finally reached the heart of the dungeon. He notices that the spider queen is in the process of laying eggs. A large spider guards the place, and he recognizes it as a night spider, the nest's protector. He knows the Spider Queen is the true leader of the lair and that he won't be able to advance silently much longer. Night spiders rarely leave their posts, acting as passive sentinels blocking any intruders. Using his magical inventory, he retrieves a silver key and some common flux. He also grabs a sack of flour and throws it toward the Spider Queen. Then he readies his crossbow and fires an arrow. Upon impact, an explosion occurs. He thinks that just a small spark in that dust mist is enough to trigger a chain reaction among the particles, what's known as a dust explosion. He immediately runs, aware that this wouldn't be enough to eliminate his enemies. The Spider Queen begins to chase him. He shoots another arrow and thinks that's it. Poisoned arrows. A system notification informs him that he used the Bell of Poison, ranked 68th among the 72 deadliest poisons created by Fade, the king of poisons. The substance causes extreme pain, yet the spiders keep following him. The scene shifts to a flashback. He holds a sack filled with webs and explains that they come from a black steel spider capable of being squeezed to produce more webs. The goat asks if these webs would work against other spiders. Zephyr confirms, explaining that without the special fluid secreted by their legs, even spiders get stuck in them. He instructs the goat to spread the webs at the strategic points he showed him on the way out. He gives the sack of webs and tells him to wait outside, stating that the boss room is much more covered in webs than the rest of the dungeon. He believes they wouldn't stand a chance if they tried to fight inside. Therefore, it's essential to lure the enemies outside. The scene returns to the present. Zephyr slides through the webs and one of the spiders gets caught. He wields the weapon made from a spider's leg and thinks only one more night spider is left. He strikes with a precise blow. Immediately after, he starts running, noticing the Spider Queen approaching. He runs toward the cave's entrance, sure he's being pursued. The goat urges him to hurry. Thinking that he always avoided danger because his own safety came first, the goat wonders how they could defeat something like the Spider Queen. Dale remembers a painful memory when other members of the hunting team mocked them. One of them ordered them to make food and clean the equipment. Another pointed their weapons and doubted their abilities, asking if they really thought they were hunters like them. They ridiculed them, saying that since they didn't even fight, they had to find some way to be useful. Dale was tired of being treated as useless. Reaching that point was already a sign that there was nothing more to fear. They could indeed fight the Spider Queen, and he prepared to attack. Marco reflects that, some time ago, they would never have dreamed of facing a monster like that. But since Zephyr's arrival, something had changed. Everything Zephyr had said so far had become reality. Marco decides to trust him once again. With conviction, he encourages the others, saying they can win. The goat, frustrated, thinks that no one ever listens to him even though he is the unit leader. But if Dale and Marco are determined to fight, he has no choice but to join them. He aims at the part of the Spider Queen's armor that was destroyed by the explosion. He explains that beneath that tough armor, the flesh is soft. Marco asks if it really is, then stabs it with a knife. Dale remembers Zephyr pointing to a specific spot, instructing them to aim there. He said that point was a cluster of nerves running right through the center of the leg. Dale covers his sword with a tranquilizer and cuts exactly there. He smiles as he sees the blade entering and says, "Sweet." At that moment, the Spider Queen shoots webs around him. He realizes there's no time to dodge. Zephyr makes a long leap and attacks her forcefully. He taunts the spider, calling her a ugly bug, and lands several blows. Dale watches, surprised by Zephyr's strength. He blocks all the Spider Queen's attacks, and Dale can barely keep up with his movements. He remembers when the goat commented that spiders weren't that strong, questioning if Zephyr was sure he wanted them to attack. The goat suggested maybe he should do it alone, but Zephyr reassured them. He said everything would be fine. The Spider Queen would be furious that her eggs had been burned and wouldn't notice what was happening behind her. Besides, the Spider Queen's black steel spiders had an unusual characteristic. Once again, he was right. 5 minutes of fighting had passed, and the Spider Queen had barely moved from where she landed. Zephyr explains that queens lay their eggs in narrow nests, so they avoid using their hind legs. It's relatively safe to attack from behind. Aside from web attacks or stomps when jumping, they focus their strikes on the front. The queen tries to hit Zephyr as he moves backward. He thinks he learned these patterns by facing giant spiders in dungeons. Now that she's kept busy, all that's left is for the tranquilizer to take effect. The rest will be just a matter of time. Marco prepares to attack with his hammer. He believes he can succeed. The goat also stabs her with a spear. He feels confident. The Spider Queen lifts the goat with the spear still stuck in him. Zephyr watches as she throws him. Furious, the queen shouts that she will never forgive them. She calls them pathetic humans. She promises not only to crush them, but also to melt them with her venom. Zephyr activates his magical mana power. He attacks her with his own hands. He grabs the venom gland and thinks, here it is. He rips the gland from the spider's body. He unties his belt and secures the gland with it. He thinks that now she won't be able to shoot venom for a few minutes. And with that, there's no rush. He leaps high, lands headfirst, focused, and tells himself to stay calm and aim carefully. He believes this fight will be remembered alongside all the others, and that whoever loses focus first will end up losing. After defeating the Spider Queen, the group approached Marco and confirmed the feat with confident applause. Marco, observing the state of the battlefield, acknowledged that they had indeed eliminated the creature. Dale, panting and staggering, reflected silently. He thought that if they were mere ordinary hunters, no Zephyr would allow them to come out victorious against the Queen. The difference was in leadership. It was surprising how a hunt could change completely depending on who led it. Perhaps if he allowed Zephyr to lead him, he could reach the same level as him. Meanwhile, Zephyr analyzed the situation and concluded that it would not be possible to hide the tracks left by the creature. Unlike what that predator had done before, he wouldn't be able to carry the entire body. Still, there was a positive side. They had eliminated some giant spiders, which would allow him to offer them to White Rose, and with that, get whatever he needed for the time being. Dale then called for Zephyr, and showing respect, congratulated him on the work done before leaving them in charge of the rest of the task. Dale suggested that Zephyr sit down and relax a bit. He then commented on Zephyr's skill in dismembering monster corpses and asked if he was thirsty, offering him some water. Shortly after, he asked if the others intended to help or not, requesting that they not leave Zephyr waiting alone. Zephyr accepted the water and noted that thanks to teamwork, he didn't need to use much mana. That meant he wouldn't have to worry about Ursa demanding repayment anytime soon. He recognized that the three companions were not bad. Not at all. However, he also concluded that they wouldn't be useful when the time came to face him. Neither their stats, nor their equipment, nor their teammates were up to the task yet. It was clear that he would need a solid plan. Sometime later, Anna Primrose commented, surprised about the presence of a real predator, something she hadn't expected to find so soon. Zephyr then handed her a pouch with the previously agreed amount. He had given a little extra, asking her to use it for a good cause. She accepted, thanked him sincerely, and said she was sure the goddess would recognize her faith. She asked if he had enough inventory space, and if not, offered to lend more. After that, she left. Zephyr then reflected on how ironic it was to smuggle with a temple in broad daylight. Given the world they lived in, no one was naive enough anymore to believe that temples were still sacred. For him, there was a clear reason why mountains of money were donated by the faithful. Entire cities grew around temples because knights and slaves faced monsters in their name. Security came at a price, and although people could buy it to a certain extent, later it would be difficult to buy the safety of their own children, even selling their own souls. Later, Anna walked alongside Zephyr and commented that they had been lucky a buyer appeared at the right moment to purchase the Predator and the black steel spiders. They received a good amount considering they were in excellent condition. She expressed admiration for how quickly he managed to bring back the black steel spiders, calling him a true warrior. When he asked how much he had paid so far, she answered somewhat coldly. She informed him that he had paid off 48% of the total amount, and that she would deduct 20% to settle the debt with the temple. Additionally, she mentioned that she had arranged the cleaning of the laboratory for him. She handed over a uniform and said that there was also an entry pass. Shortly after, the system displayed a notification about items available for purchase, including renting a silver alchemy set. She explained that since it was large and difficult to transport, the equipment couldn't be borrowed directly. She also said everyone left the laboratory at 7 o'clock and he could use it from then on. Before leaving, she reminded him not to forget to clean everything after use. He thought that was definitely safer than trying to smuggle the equipment out of the lab. Since there was never anyone to do the cleaning, he would probably be able to use it that very night. He commented that it would work for him. Anna assured him he would receive 2 payments, saying it wasn't a bad deal. At that moment, Medstrier appeared, addressing her as if she were his sister. He said he was looking for her and asked if she had a minute to talk, while giving Zephyr a direct look. He was surprised to see him there. Ned was an Inquisitor's agent, one of the 12 only first-class agents recognized by the temple, and there was a history between them. Anna asked what brought him there, adding sarcastically that she doubted it was to invite her out on a date. He wondered if he wanted to request a loan, but said he was busy at the moment. She suspected he was only pretending to want to talk to her when in fact his interest was her client. Ned was Sack's superior, the same guy who had been beaten up by her client. She knew those idiots would eventually do something, but that behavior was reckless even by their standards. Showing up to confront one of her clients right in front of her, an official priestess, was a serious mistake. She said they could talk another time and mentioned she would tell him about some low-interest loans, knowing his credit was good. Ed Strier, persistent, asked if he could make a quick question. He offered to buy her a cup of tea, suggesting his friend join them. He asked if Zephyr and Sahak knew each other. Zephyr replied that he had never heard of Sahak, saying his memory wasn't the best and couldn't remember all the bags of trash he'd come across. They stared at each other, exchanging pressure through the use of mana. Anna was stunned to realize that the energy was so intense it seemed almost to pierce her skin. That level of power was so high that she concluded Zephyr was not just an ordinary combat slave. In fact, he might even be stronger than a temple knight. Ned Strier thought that seeing him up close like that, he understood why Sahak couldn't just pass by him. He hadn't come to fight, but decided to take a look at the skills of that little idiot. Anna ordered both of them to kneel. The system window notified. Slave mark is a tattoo printed by priests of the light. It allows force orders to be issued against those marked. Both saw the mark on their arms glow. With no choice, they knelt. Anna slapped Zephyr, grabbed him by the shirt, and asked what he thought he was doing. She advised him not to be stupid, questioning if he was trying to get himself killed. She said that from that moment on, she would have to teach him a lesson. Addressing Ned Streer, she stated that to him, Zephyr was like a toy. If he dared lay a finger on him, she would kill him. After a while, she sat on the stairs and asked why he couldn't just ignore him. She commented that Zephyr was dangerously unpredictable. Her hands were still shaking. She knew Ned was strong. After all, he was a first-class agent. But almost no one had ever seen him fight. Those who faced him were all dead. She vented, saying he made her anxious by putting himself in danger like that. She swore that if he didn't pay his debt, she herself would kill him. She thought he shouldn't dare hurt himself. After all, he was her source of income. She held his face and asked him to be more careful. Said she couldn't protect him outside the temple. Zephyr pulled her hand away and replied that they were just greeting each other. If he really wanted to fight, she wouldn't have had time to stop him. He believed that Ned showing up like that was a sign that he was almost ready. It was better to hurry up and leave as well. Anna asked where he was going. Zephyr replied that he was going to the laboratory and asked if she could do him one more favor. She wanted to know what it was. Meanwhile, Ned Streer commented that this was the power of the mark. It was even more repulsive than he had imagined. The scene then shifted to a flashback. Ned asked the master if he was really suggesting he go to the Temple of Light and become a slave. He questioned that humiliating mark that the priests printed. Said the master knew how much he hated those people, and yet he was asking him that. The master explained that 2 worshippers of Tartarus had been sent to the temple disguised as priests but ended up executed. Now the priests were under strict surveillance. Those who had not yet been discovered were in hiding. Therefore, that strategy would no longer work. However, there was another way to infiltrate. The priests of light did not monitor Mark's slaves, believing they could control them easily. They would use that against them. The master ordered Ned to go to the Temple of Light with a mark, steal the raid dungeon reward, and emphasized that he was the only one capable of completing that mission. Back in the present, Ned thought the priests of light would never imagine what was coming. They didn't even know they had found a way to neutralize the mark. But they still couldn't use it. They would have to wait for the right time, and when it came, they would make those disgusting priests pay. Meanwhile, some people were working to fix fences. A man called out to gather food. Another, wearing a cap, asked if it was already break time. He approached the food table and commented that it seemed like they had to do this every 2 weeks. Someone else asked why the fences kept getting destroyed. Someone replied that they had no choice. Poor people like them couldn't pay the temple for protection, so if they needed to keep their fences strong. At least one of them declared that he'd like to see a monster try to attack them. He would kick its butt himself. Then someone mentioned that a person from the temple had arrived. The man with the cap asked what was going on. Sahak appeared. One of the men asked what brought him there. Sahak asked how many people lived in that place. They said just over 50. He nodded and began to play his magical instrument. Several monstrous spirits emerged from the instrument and started slaughtering everyone. To him, this was his new power. That idiot would never humiliate him like that again. He swore he would never forgive him, and that he would make him suffer 100 times more. Meanwhile, the system window notified the existence of a laboratory in the Temple of Light, a facility responsible for the study and creation of potions and various equipment. In the environment, green herb branches, moldy bark from rotten trees, cobalt bodily fluids, mushrooms, corpses, and gray centipedes could be seen. Zephyr observed everything carefully and concluded that once he mixed and boiled all those ingredients with the venom of the queen spider, his formula would finally be complete. He considered Zaven to be number 61 among the 72 deadly poisons of the feared Fade, the king of poisons. Sometime later, already in a room, Zephyr was sharpening his knife. Anna Primrose sat on the bed, holding a paper and lost in memories. Zephyr made it clear that if Ned's little lackeys interrupted them, everything would be lost. He needed her help. Anna, however, hesitated, uncomfortable with the idea of giving up her room. Zephyr reminded her of the promise she had made to protect him while he was in the temple, and asked if she had changed her mind. He also reminded her that if he got caught, she would lose money as well. Faced with this, Anna eventually agreed, realizing he was right. While flipping through the paper, she saw a sketch of a human figure and wondered what it meant. She then watched Zephyr break a piece of arc, a wood as hard as metal with his human strength, turning it into thin, sharp needles. Anna was impressed by the feat and, confused, tried to understand why he was doing it. Zephyr mentally explained the plan. The needles would be used as medical instruments in the manner of Eastern medicine. He intended to dip their tips in Belul and Zagan, both diluted in a ratio of 1 to 100, and leave them to rest for 10 minutes. In his view, poisons were simple substances, meant to kill effortlessly. That's what everyone thought, but reality was more complex. The story had changed since the demons invaded the world and the gods disappeared. Determined, Zephyr began to pierce himself with the poison-coated needles. The pain was intense, forcing him to cough. When Anna tried to approach, he stopped her with a gesture, making it clear he didn't want help. She remembered a memory while he mentally insisted that no matter what happened, she should not panic. He asked her to trust him and be ready to act when he gave the signal. She wondered what exactly he intended to do. Zephyr reflected that his goal was to update himself. With the right focus, he believed the 72 poisons could become healing potions or ones that enhanced the body beyond its limits. Unfortunately, his current condition did not allow for finer adjustments. Ingredients were scarce and his stats still weak. He was trapped in the painful combination of Belul, extremely aggressive, with the unstable Zagan. Still, he had no alternative. Sitting in a meditative position, Zephyr activated the flow of mana. The system window explained that this flow was an Eastern technique used to train internal energy, allowing mana to circulate through the blood vessels. With this, it would be possible to heal internal injuries or increase the maximum mana level with constant practice. His hope was to use the flow to contain the spread of the poison. If he succeeded, he would update successfully. If he failed, his body would be destroyed from within. Still, he considered the risk insignificant, unable to compare that pain to the torments he had already faced in his previous life. Anna watched him and was amazed to see his blood vessels begin to return to their normal color. Zephyr, for his part, acknowledged that he could barely move his body and so asked her to watch him closely. When he gave the signal, she should insert the final needle at the top of his head. He mentally asked if she was ready and instructed her to proceed. Anna took the needle, aware of the fatal consequences of a mistake. She approached slowly, her heart racing with tension. She knew she couldn't fail. Several hours later, the scene shifted to the forest north of the Temple of Light. An intense red light fell from the sky. A group of people ran desperately, accompanied by creatures resembling ostriches. They were all fleeing to save their lives. One of the men warned the others that the monsters were right behind them. Another, wearing a yellow cap, grumbled that it was the fault of the fools from the reconnaissance unit. They had claimed there was only one nest, but the forest was infested with creatures. A gray-haired man asked if reinforcements had been called. Another, wearing a red cap, replied that he had fired a flare a minute ago and help should be on the way. He suggested everyone retreat to the temple. Before he could finish, he was brutally killed by one of the monsters. The survivors concluded the temple was about 3 miles away. Even running non-stop, it would take at least 20 minutes to reach it, and 20 minutes in that situation seemed like an unreachable eternity. He turned as he noticed the attackers approaching, already ready for the slaughter. He estimated that in no more than 2 minutes, nothing would remain of him except a pile of bones. One of the monsters, ostrich-like, prepared to attack, but suddenly a beam of mana descended from the sky with brutal force and struck its head. An intense explosion occurred nearby. Zephyr landed, his body immersed in full mana power. The monster moved violently, trying to attack him. Zephyr easily dodged, grabbed the creature by the neck, and twisted it with his amplified strength. Then he grabbed another by the mouth and began a relentless sequence of attacks. He estimated there were 12 monsters left outside the dungeon. Therefore, his plan was simple: destroy the necks of the 12 bird monsters one by one. Without wasting time, he launched a simultaneous attack on all of them. The gray-haired man watching from afar was stunned. He assumed Zephyr must be part of the reinforcements sent by the temple, impressed by how quickly he had arrived. Someone beside him wondered if that man was really alone. Zephyr approached and asked for the location of the nest. The man responded automatically, pointing to the side and saying to just follow that direction. Zephyr just confirmed with an understood and leaped high away. The man reflected, astonished that he had answered instinctively as if facing a superior of much higher rank. Zephyr's overwhelming aura had dominated him. That was why he revealed the dungeon's location without hesitation. Now he regretted not having provided more detailed information, but it was already too late. Zephyr had vanished from sight. He remembered that 4 of his 7 companions had died inside the dungeon. Of the 3 who remained, only he had survived. He knew very well how dangerous it was in there, and because of that, he regretted not doing anything to try to stop Zephyr from going in alone. He thought the group should have waited for the remaining reinforcements. At the very least, he felt he should have tried to stop him. While pondering what to do next, a new explosion erupted in the direction Zephyr had gone. Shortly after, he saw Zephyr returning. He was dragging the head of a monstrous creature. Shocked, the man wondered what exactly had happened. He recognized the monster as the dungeon boss. Looking at Zephyr more closely, he noticed that his body was enveloped in a powerful mana glow. He thought Zephyr's body seemed incredibly light, as if it had no weight at all. He concluded that Zephyr's stats had probably doubled thanks to the effectiveness of the poison he had used. Now all he lacked was good equipment. Zephyr was already planning to obtain new items and fire the green flare. The system window informed that launching the green flare indicated the emergency had been resolved. Meanwhile, Sahak remained seated atop the monster's corpse. In silence, he thought that it wouldn't be long before the next threat emerged. The scene moves forward a few days, focusing on Mathis Grimmer Sr. The Inquisitor of the Third Parish of the Temple of Light was reporting that a nest of raging scars had been discovered. It was a medium-sized nest, led by a creature nearly 30 meters tall. According to his report, a single slave had defeated the entire group. His investigation at the site confirmed the accounts of eyewitnesses among the few survivors. He believed the slave was clearly trying desperately to show off his skills, especially now, with only 20 days remaining until the attack. The Inquisitor suggested it was evident that there was an intent to include this man in the assault team. Given that, he raised the possibility of interrogating him, suspecting he might be a worshipper of Tartarus, Lucius Jedi, the commander of the Temple Knights of the Third Parish, rejected the suggestion and ordered that the man be left alone. He argued that if they couldn't hunt down all potential worshippers of Tartarus before the attack, there was no point in pursuing that path. Lucius Jedi, in turn, admitted that no matter how hard he tried, he wouldn't be able to sniff them all out. He concluded that they should accept the best fighters into the assault team, regardless of their affiliation, worshippers of Tartarus or not. He asked what Mathis Grimmer thought about it and explained that on their own, they were not strong enough to reach the boss chamber. For that reason, he would resort to the strategy of using such individuals as tools. He suggested that the best course of action would be to let these warriors help them reach the boss room, and then eliminate them along with the main enemy. He reminded Mathis Grimmer that he was not just the captain of the vanguard of the assault group, but also his friend of 20 years. He emphasized that Mathis had already opposed that plan several times and asked if he had forgotten about Lucius Jedi. With a laugh, he admitted he anticipated Maya's concern, which was why he had chosen to share the information only with Mathis. Immediately after, he opened a door, revealing the shining lance and the winged shield of Michael, artifacts he had acquired at the cost of a third of his entire fortune. Mathis Grimmer was shocked to see those legendary items, previously known only through book descriptions. Lucius Jedi patted him on the back, assuring him that after 10 years of trying to conquer that dungeon, it would finally succeed. He claimed that with those items in hand, he would become invincible in the assault, and there was no need for concern. Meanwhile, Dale was commenting that he was just starting to warm up and asked why the training field was so crowded. Marco replied that the news of the attack had probably spread, and since there were still 2 or 3 slots left for slaves in the assault team, everyone was trying hard to stand out. Dale wanted to understand what that had to do with them. Anna Primrose arrived, causing everyone to line up, bow, and greet her. She observed coldly that they should pay their interest on time, calling them losers. Dale, confused, asked what was going on and why that grumpy nun was in their room. Zephyr, sitting on the bed, was sliding a ring onto his finger. Everyone was shocked to recognize the item. Goat wondered if Sister Anna Primrose had been there, and if so, whether that meant Zephyr had gotten her ring. Curious, he wanted to know where he had gotten it. Zephyr answered vaguely, saying it was just a gift from someone. A system window indicated that the Ring of Purification improved monarch circulation, increased magical defense, and removed curses once per day. He reflected that the White Rose had really found him a decent item. He recalled her promise that once the update was complete, they would get him the proper gear. That ring was just a sample of what she could obtain at no extra cost, thanks to the services he had provided. All he needed to do was specify the desired stats, and she could provide any necessary item. He found it impressive that she had brought up the equipment before he had even mentioned it, showing attentiveness and competence. He saw in her a strong business sense and strategic intelligence. Meanwhile, Anna Primrose was walking down the corridors, lost in her own thoughts. She recalled that she had obtained information about them through a black market contact in Propan. She thought about the legendary assassin guild, which used poisons to enhance stats and combined martial arts with lethal toxins to eliminate targets. Anna Primrose reflected that Zephyr's suspiciously phenomenal talent for hunting, combined with his poison-based physical enhancements, now made sense. She concluded that he had probably been an assassin from the now-defunct Penny organization. She remembered that Penny had dissolved due to internal conflict a few years earlier. However, she had learned that former wealthy clients were now trying to trace the poison used by the guild and locate surviving members. These clients would be willing to pay a fortune for that level of skill and toxins. Compared to that, the money she earned trading monsters seemed insignificant. She then decided she had to recruit Zephyr to work for her. However, before that, it was essential to provide him with equipment worthy of his abilities. She assured herself that she would find something that would exceed his expectations and leave him dazzled. Meanwhile, Zephyr wondered where she had gotten that idea, but concluded that, in the end, it might work to his advantage. He figured that once White Rose started spreading rumors about him, she would be the one to come looking for him. Goat placed a hand on his shoulder, insinuating that something was going on between him and Anna Primrose, and praised his impressive skills. Marco added that it explained why Zephyr had been out all night and said he respected him as a man. Zephyr, however, had no idea what they were talking about. He just wanted to talk to them about the dungeon. At that moment, a noise caught everyone's attention. Dale looked through the door and asked who it was. He soon saw a paper stuck to the door with a knife, indicating an urgent mission addressed to Goat's unit. He immediately went out to report the situation. Goat examined the paper and questioned who could have sent such a secretive order and vanished right after. Marco looked at the document and commented that it looked official, pointing out the seal and signature of the head of the hunting team. Zephyr took the paper and decided to analyze it himself. Upon examining it, he realized that although the signature was authentic, the rest of the text was clearly in Ned's handwriting. He concluded that Ned was finally challenging him and decided to face him alone. After some time, Zephyr was running through the forest, reflecting on what was to come. There were about 20 days left until the Temple Knight's assault. He knew the target wasn't just any dungeon, it was the tomb of the fallen princess, one of the 8 most difficult missions in the world. He considered it a vast ruin of the ancient kingdom of Media, extremely hard to conquer. The elite group had been trying to beat it for over 10 years but hadn't even reached the boss chamber. Furthermore, there were strict criteria to join the assault. One had to have been part of the top 5 hunting units of the previous year, serve directly under a priest for the guaranteed slot, or be nominated by a slave of that status. Zephyr acknowledged that his unit had no chance of being among the top 5 last year. Therefore, he planned to use Ned to his advantage. He knew Ned was a slave directly subordinate to Inquisitor Maus. If he could trick him into giving a letter of recommendation, he could immediately join the assault team. Ned had received a mission he couldn't fail. Because of that, he wouldn't miss the chance to face someone who mastered the same martial arts as he did. Zephyr believed that Ned was probably wondering if he was a trustworthy ally sent by his master, or an enemy who had stolen his techniques. Ned was likely also questioning his strength and intentions. When Zephyr arrived at the location, he found Sahak waiting. The young man greeted him with sarcasm, complimenting his entrance. Zephyr immediately recognized the voice and wondered what Sahak was doing there. Then he told him to leave. He didn't have time for games. Sahak mentioned that the pain of the scar on his face inflicted by Zephyr himself had not left his mind for the past 10 days. The constant memory kept him from sleeping every night. He drew his weapon and declared that Zephyr should prepare to witness his new power, advising him to say his prayers. Zephyr reacted quickly, striking Sahak and rendering him unconscious. Reflecting on the situation, Zephyr pondered that Ned, being calculating and meticulous, would never put Sahak in a direct confrontation without hiding another card up his sleeve. He questioned whether he intended to reveal it. For his part, Zephyr affirmed that he was ready to face any challenges that might arise. Sahak regained consciousness, laughing, summoning a Shogo monster through a magical instrument. He commented that Zephyr had underestimated him once again. The monster lifted Sahak with ease, surprising Zephyr. Sahak then declared his intention to kill Zephyr slowly and painfully, ordering the Shogo to attack him. As the battle unfolded, Zephyr questioned the reason behind all of it. Sahak, laughing maniacally, screamed for him to die. Zephyr counterattacked with magic, channeling mana. In the aftermath, Sahak was shocked, unable to understand how Zephyr had managed to defeat the monster. He identified the creature as one of the biological weapons used by the worshippers of Tartarus, and had not expected to encounter one there. The Shoggoth remained dormant in its egg form until awakened by the sound of a hypnotic instrument. The system window revealed that the hypnosis ocarina controlled the Shogo according to the combination of notes played. Additionally, the ocarina issued specific commands and protected the user from the mental corruption caused by the creature. Zephyr understood that the Shoggoth did not possess a mind of its own, only an insatiable hunger. He also realized that physical attacks were useless against it, and that the creature grew stronger with every human it devoured, absorbing their mana. When the Shoggoth moved to attack him, Zephyr acknowledged that this alone was terrifying. But something even more dreadful followed. Once the monster made contact, mental corruption began. The creature induced fear and hallucinations. Once the victim's mind was fully corrupted, a frenzy state was triggered. Zephyr reflected that in this state, individuals completely lost control, killing even their own allies. It was a definitive weapon created by the worshippers of Tartarus to facilitate the slaughter of their own kind. The Shoggoth captured him. Sahak accused him of being a fool, saying that if he had already lost his mind, he had no idea what was coming next. He pointed to Zephyr's eyes, now completely red, indicating that he was on the verge of frenzy, and that his mind was nearly fully corrupted. Sahak predicted his imminent death. However, Zephyr activated the magic of the ring he wore and invoked the curse removal ability. The system window indicated that the ring of purification promoted a more fluid circulation of mana in the bearer's body and increased their magical defense. The curse removal ability could be used once per day. After killing the Shogo, Zephyr grabbed Sahak by the neck. He declared that in the past, all that had mattered to him was saving himself and the people he cared about. That had always seemed like the most sensible choice, given the misery of the world. But over time, he began to question it. He wondered if things might have been different had there been more people around him who knew how to fight, more humans willing to work together. Maybe then, the ones he loved would have had a chance to live longer. Sahak couldn't understand what he was talking about. Zephyr then explained that in this life, he would choose to spare those he could, and offer a chance to those who wished to become stronger, even if he himself could not be saved. He asked how many people Sahak had fed to the monster. Estimating about 100, he questioned how many more needed to die before Sahak would be satisfied. In a fury, he cursed Sahak and declared that he did not deserve to live. Then he threw him to the ground, channeled mana, and delivered a blow directly to his heart. Sahak coughed blood from the impact. Zephyr followed with another punch to the face, crushing it. Finally, he unleashed a special technique that triggered a storm of devastating blows, finishing with one final attack. His palm was accelerated with mana, creating a blood mist that exploded in a beam across the opponent's face. The technique was widely feared and known in the East as the Dragon's Roar. Zephyr reflected that the secret technique of the martial arts style of the Dragon King was the legendary Lightning Palm. He observed Sahak's lifeless body and concluded that the electric shock must have killed him instantly. He imagined it must have been painful for the electricity to course pulse through his entire body that way. He thought Sahak had received exactly the kind of death he deserved. Retrieving his instrument, he reflected that physical attacks didn't work against the Shoggoth. The creature could only be defeated by elemental attacks such as electricity or fire or with divine energy. He felt relieved that the Shoggoth was still small. One more strike should be enough to destroy it. He decided not to spend more mana and instead played a song with his instrument. The system window informed him that the Shoggoth's annihilation code broke the mana bonds that held its cells together. Ned Strier arrived, surprised upon hearing that melody. He remarked that only the worshippers of Tartarus knew it, and that it was highly classified, unknown even to the intelligence agency of the temple. He noted that Zephyr seemed to know too much. Zephyr saw him and thought to himself, finally. He remembered that Ned had previously mentioned being on a mission he couldn't afford to fail. Zephyr knew he couldn't ignore someone who practiced the same martial arts as he did. If he could deceive Ned and obtain a letter of recommendation, he could immediately join the classification team. He believed that Ned would be eager to test him at that moment. Zephyr had anticipated this moment. He knew he needed to pass the test and convince Ned that he was a worshipper of Tartarus. Only then could he change the future and pay off the debt left in his previous life. He desired a different ending in this life. To achieve that, he had to deceive Ned and seize the opportunity to get close to him, no matter the cost. Ned Strier, however, declared that he had been watching him the entire time and had concluded that Zephyr needed to be eliminated. He drew his sword and prepared to strike. Zephyr used his power to block all of Ned's attacks. He felt that something was off. All the strikes missed their target. Zephyr threw magically enhanced stones at Ned. Ned stepped back, impressed that Zephyr had dodged his attack and prepared to counterattack. Zephyr considered that only his master and a few others on Earth could dodge his sword. He concluded that Ned must be using some kind of trick. He commented that it wasn't fair to attack an unarmed person with a sword. He tossed aside his own sword and prepared for hand-to-hand combat. Both of them advanced at the same time. Zephyr recalled that, like the lightning palm, the secret technique of the Dragon King's martial arts style enveloped the enemy with electricity through explosive acceleration. The technique granted incredible speed and power, but those familiar with the style also knew how to counter it. Zephyr considered the floating cloud technique as one of the secret skills of the Dragon King's style. In this technique, there were two types of electricity, negative and positive. Opposite types of electricity attracted each other, while like charges repelled. This defensive ability used those properties by neutralizing positive electric attacks with positive electricity, protecting the user and completely nullifying the attack. Ned Strier reflected that executing this technique was far harder than it seemed. Most people would never be able to keep up with such fast attacks. He knew that it was necessary to surround oneself with enough electricity, or else the strike would pierce through the defenses. He concluded that if the defender's electricity was equal to or greater than the attacker's, the strike would bounce off. But if it was weaker, the attack would break through. He knew he had to calibrate his electric defense with absolute precision, at the right time and the right amount within fractions of a second. It took intense training to develop the reflexes needed to use this ability effectively in battle. It wasn't something that could be copied with a simple trick or imitation skill. That's why Ned believed his opponent was genuine. He was surprised. He mentioned that only he and his brother had learned the Dragon King's secret technique. He demanded to know who Zephyr truly was. Zephyr replied that he was Jang of the East, the 9th highest-ranking worshipper of Tartarus. He explained that Jang had crossed the Sahara Desert, a region dominated by demons and inaccessible to humans, to reach that land, Eastern Island. Zephyr reflected that by using the mysterious martial art of the Dragon King, Jianang had risen to a position of prominence among the worshippers of Tartarus. Jianang had two direct disciples who, unlike the hundreds of common apprentices, had received his deepest teachings directly. He believed that one of the disciples was Jiang's own son, Jingang, and the other was Ned Strier, a disciple that Jianang had brought with him. Aslan believed that to teach sparring using the martial art of the Dragon King, two direct disciples were necessary, but no more than that. The mysterious martial art of the Dragon King needed to remain secret. Ned Strier declared that he had no memory of ever seeing Zephyr, not even among the common disciples. He found it suspicious that Zephyr had destroyed the Shogo, one of his sacred origis. The creature was a valuable asset prepared through the sacrifice of more than 100 humans, as part of an imminent attack. He wasn't even sure if Zephyr was truly a worshipper of Tartarus. He demanded to know who he really was and what he wanted. Zephyr calmly responded, saying he understood. He mentioned that he had never heard anything from their master and questioned whether Ned really believed that Jianang had only two direct disciples. He raised a finger and explained that Ned could have predicted this outcome if he had thought it through a bit more. It was true that only two direct disciples learned the Dragon King's secret techniques at any one time. However, Zephyr asked Ned to consider, what would happen if one of them died? Ned Strier reflected in silence. If one disciple died and only one remained, that person would have no one to train with. Their master was too busy to train the remaining disciple personally, and it would take too long to prepare a new direct disciple from scratch. Ned wondered if that was the case now. Zephyr then confirmed his suspicion. He stated that he was in fact the shadow disciple secretly trained to take the place of one of the primary disciples should one of them die. Hey everyone, did you enjoy this story? I really liked it. If you want to follow the next part, make sure to subscribe to the channel and leave a like. See you in the next story, guys.